Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. As always, I'm Rich Maletto, along with the man, the myth, the legend, Sean Engel. You can find Sean on Twitter at SeanE247. That's SeanE247. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyBosco, all spelled out FantasyBosco. RaceGuru Thunder Hour brought to you by FantasyGuru.com and the Elite Plus Network. Welcome aboard. We're back at you to talk NASCAR. Sean, what is going on, my friend?
Rich, I'm here. We're ready to talk some NASCAR. Just been kind of relishing the week. It's been a bit of a productive week on my end, but I'm ready to talk some motorsports. Ready to see some cars make some left and right turns this week. Should be fun.
Yes, we are going all sorts of directions this weekend at COTA, and we'll get to that in 1 second. Remember, you can find us on fantasyguru.com. This is a part of you can get this as a part of the Game Time MVP package. $74.99 for the next 12 months. Get you everything NHL, NBA, NASCAR, racing, MMA, PGA. I'm forgetting another A, horse racing. You can find it all except for football and baseball. Fortunately, those guys, not unfortunately. Fortunately, I mean, look, Jeff and Ray, their programs over there on those two products, and the whole staff, I shouldn't downplay that, but the whole staff, it's well worth it. It's on its own anyway. But it's also March Madness. I don't know about you, Sean, but people are definitely feeling March Madness. We've got a March Madness package for you too, $39.99. Even if the bracket is already done and busted, remember, you can keep betting. You got a bracket, Sean? You playing some March Madness?
Not as much this year, I'm afraid, Rich. I just did not have the time to put together one this year, and March Madness is not exactly my strongest suit either. I'm going to be real honest with you on that. But that's why everybody should go out there and get the March Madness package, follow our experts. I think that because they know much more about that than I. They know what they're talking about. They'll help you win.
Winners win at fantasyguru.com, that's for sure. Well, yes. We've been winning on NASCAR. Now, last weekend at Bristol was a little bit of a different deal, and you and I talked a little bit offline, so to speak, on that. It turned into a tire management situation. That there's just no getting around that. It is what it is. Personally, I'm of the opinion I think NASCAR just found it out for its short track problem. As a fan that grew up watching this and watching people, even like Pearson going way back, Petty, Earnhardt, Elliott, Jeff Gordon, Denny Hamlin, right? Taking care of equipment was a part of NASCAR. That's why we had 500-mile races. The car wasn't indestructible. The tires weren't indestructible. You had to maintain equipment to be there at the end, and we haven't really had to do that lately. But we got some of that this past weekend, man.
Yeah, totally. If anything, a lot of the teams were caught completely off guard by the fact that tire management became such a concern because the tires were wearing out as quick as they were, around like 45 for 50 laps or so. That's when the tires started really losing grip. The rubber was just all over the track. Cars were sliding, and drivers were just doing all they can in order to just maintain control. And really the crazy thing about it is, Rich, is you mentioned about how this may have been an out for NASCAR. The whole thing is that Goodyear and even some of NASCAR themselves are still figuring out some aspects of how it got there exactly. They have some ideas, but nothing for certain yet.
Well, and I think the $1 million question is, why didn't the track take rubber, right? Like, I've been having conversations with people that don't follow the sport as much, but this isn't really that uncommon with tire wear. We've seen this. If you go into the garage and talk to crew chiefs, especially long-term crew chiefs, they'll tell you, look, they'll rattle off a handful of racetracks where we know if it's fresh green track. What they mean by that, there's no rubber on it. We've had a lot of weather or rain, or hasn't been a race on it in months and months. So the track is raw, if you will, green. And it's harder on tires when it's that way. And so at practice, we'll see excess wear, and you'll hear crew chiefs going, we're not too worried about it. We're running a competition caution, so we'll get to do an early pit stop. We'll double check, but track's going to take some rubber. As it takes rubber, the wear is going to level out, and these won't be an issue by the end of the race. And this is really nothing new for them in that regard. This past weekend, though, that never happened. The track never took rubber. And what was really, really weird, this was the same tire compound that they ran in the fall race last year.
Yep,
And
they confirmed that.
Yep. And NASCAR said the wear was so great in the fall race, we're going to pull one set of tires. We're not going to give you as many set of tires for this weekend. So I don't know if the PGA won and the cold temps, because I have to believe the track temperature had to be a solid 20, 30 degrees cooler this past weekend than what we normally get in, August, September. It could be even more extreme than that. I don't know. I got to believe that the Goodyear engineers, though, know exactly at what temps concrete typically takes. Maybe they don't, but I would assume that would be all part of, I don't think people understand this, but they are so good at making tires. If Goodyear wanted to, they could make a tire that they never took off the race the entire time. They could do that. They could build a tire that came apart every 5 laps if they wanted to and would be super fast. They can do all these things. So to your point, Sean, the fact that I think they're all stumped on why we got a bunch of marbles and chunked up rubber in it not taking to the track is the real question. And I don't think they know the answer. That said, I do think the answer to the $1 million question is if we get tire wear at these short tracks, the passing problem, the horsepower, all this other stuff is a non-issue. Thoughts?
Yeah, I do think that with tire wear now being in play, well, instead of worrying about the whole issue of aero, instead the issue of handling will just be affected by the tires, which I think is a good substitute. And then from there, you wouldn't even have to worry about the horsepower or the big horsepower debate that we've been having within like the past couple of months, just with this rules package alone. It's a solution and another way in order to go about that. And as we've seen from this Bristol race, there is room for it to work. It isn't perfect now because this race still, some of the drivers were complaining about how fast the tires wore out and everything. But I think it's a step in the right direction as far as to figure out what can be done to improve the racing product at these short tracks.
Oh, for sure. I think it's a matter of working with Goodyear now. They're going to get to the root of why the track didn't take rubber. But I think going forward, they're going to realize we need to really get aggressive with tire wear. And maybe the drivers don't like the idea of managing the tires, but I'm hoping we learned that just because only 5 cars were on the lead lap, that doesn't mean it wasn't a good race. The idea of how many cars are on the lead lap being what is a good race, I hope this illustrated the tire wear, the tire management, the driver input, because it definitely made a difference. Strategy definitely came back into play, and stop worrying about the number of passes because of whose nose in front of whose and how many cars are on the lead lap. Let's get back to some old school racing. And I'm hoping we don't know what this is going to lead to, but I got to believe with as much excitement as there was from the fan base, and it was from NASCAR management too, that they got the finish they wanted. I didn't really hardly see any fans griping at all. Goodyear, I mean, in all fairness, when we've seen this happen in the past, Goodyear walks away with a black eye. They're kind of getting away scot-free on this. Like, everybody's like, it's okay, buddy. You tried. You did an okay job. It worked out. Let's just try to do better next time. I mean, that's it. We talked about in the Discord, this is nothing like 2008 Brickyard.
Oh, no, it definitely isn't. It isn't a case where drivers are going forth and they can't even get around the track because tires are blowing up every 10 seconds.
Right.
I mean, it's drivers are able to have control and maintain it. It's just overall, the teams weren't exactly 100% prepared for this circumstance. But now that this has happened, oh, they certainly will. And I'm just going to mention this too. They bring the same sort of tire towards the next big concrete track over at
Dover.
Martinsville or Dover. Yeah, that might be a good race right there to look forward to.
Well, they need to do something at Martinsville, so I'm really curious what they decide to do. Like I said, I feel like this now gave them a aiming point. Okay, we saw what worked. Now, how do we mimic it to work that way without creating chaos? Because this was borderline going to be chaotic. I mean, NASCAR did go back and give all teams an extra set of tires, and I think they would have given them 2. I don't think Goodyear had enough from what I was reading. So we'll quickly cover highlights. Look, top 3 spots in the Cup race went to veterans: Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, Brad Keselowski. If you had asked Sean and I pre-race or told us that it was going to be a tire management race, or we had that in mind, those 3 guys would have been much higher on all our radars, period. They all have a knack and a reputation going back of handling in maintaining equipment like that. Hamlin and Keselowski had to build cars coming up and work on them. So that was part of it. But so just some takeaway for that. Eckes dominated the truck race. Kyle Busch did get the stage win, but hey, Kyle Busch in that Spire truck is not the Kyle Busch of Kyle Busch Motorsports, at least not yet. They flash at times, but let's not get overly excited when he's in truck races like we used to do. We covered the short track package. We'll hit it again a little bit about this weekend, but really the bigger question for us, tires, what are we going to do going forward? Other than that, man, let's get into some hot news for the week. Sean, you want to tee it up for us?
Yes, sirree. So let's get right on into the news. And first of all, we're going to start with an Xfinity-based announcement here with Hellmann's. They are going to continue to sponsor Junior Motorsports until 2026 at the very least. And at the same time, when they made this announcement, Dale Jr. himself announced that he will be starting in the Xfinity Series race at Bristol in September. And Hellmann's is going to sponsor him in that race. So we know from last season, Rich, when he does, we all know Dale Jr., he does like the 1 or 2 races in Xfinity every year. But last year, he also did run this exact Bristol race. And you know what, Rich? He was pretty competitive in that race until his car maintained that fire. So what are your thoughts on Junior returning to Bristol in September in the Xfinity Series in particular?
I was much more apprehensive last year when you and I talked about Junior because I said he hadn't been in the car. This is a tough track. Even he's mentioned a top 10 would be kind of like a big win. But then, yeah, the way he started out, and he didn't start up front, if I remember correctly. I feel like he had to come through the field a little bit. But he was up front. He was fast. He was knocking cars down. I'll be a little more willing to let my fandom blind me a little bit and get a little action on Junior. I'm excited to see it. You know, as long as he's having fun and he's competitive when he does it, I'm all for it. You know, I'm fine with Jimmy getting in it too, because for the most part, he's competitive, right? He's not just tooling around in the back. I just hated the timing of all the other stuff that went with it. So, hey, more power to Earnhardt. I'll be looking forward to it. Look, that's my favorite race of the year. I mean, if I could take a weekend and take off and go to a race, it's that night race at Bristol. That's my jam, man.
That's a good call right there. The Bristol night race is usually one of the more entertaining races on the schedule anyway.
Absolutely. And more Xfinity news, and I guess I missed this. So Matt DiBenedetto found a part-time ride for the rest of this year?
Yeah, this is Matt DiBenedetto. He finally announced that he has a new ride with the team, Viking Motorsports. They're the number 38 team, and originally within the past few weeks, that used to be the team that CJ McLaughlin was driving for in collaboration with RSS Racing. So it was basically another RSS Racing team. But DiBenedetto, he announced that he's going to be driving with this team for at least 5 races. There could be more on the table depending on performance and other circumstances, but it is confirmed that DiBenedetto will be driving in 5 different events in this number 38 car for Viking Motorsports. He will be driving starting at Richmond, and then at Martinsville, Texas, Talladega, and Dover. So 5 races right there, but the team is thinking that he could potentially run this car for the rest of the season if they like the performance they see. So what do you think there, Rich?
I'm sure that's his goal. DiBenedetto he's a fun personality. You know, he catches a lot of flack these days because of some sponsorship announcements. He's rubbed some folks in the garage wrong. As far as how he's handled sponsorships and some of the things he said. I have a couple of buddies that have friends that are team owners and sponsors, and he's left a very bad taste in all of their mouths. For him and his career, I hope he has success. I fear Viking Motorsports isn't where he's going to find that. But if he can at least get some respectable finishes, I mean, he'll bring a car home for the most part. If he can get it inside the top 15, that team will be better off for it. You know, this in the grand scheme of things, this isn't going to move the needle big for me.
Yeah, and especially just because we also have to remember this team, they changed out of CJ McLaughlin also just because he failed to qualify for 2 of the 4 races that they tried to go through and put together so far this season. So they're thinking maybe they're going to try to see if it's a driver change that will help fix the problem for the team, especially since they're aligned with RSS Racing, which, as we know, that's one of the very few Ford teams at the Xfinity Series level. And RSS, although their equipment kind of varies team to team, at their very best, they could basically be a top 15, borderline top 10 team there. So something to keep in mind.
Yep. The more fun news, right? We were talking about Dale Jr. What else does Dale Jr. have cooking for us coming up here, Sean?
Boy, the Dale Jr. Newswire has been really busy over the last day or two, but overall, this next story comes courtesy of Hendrick Motorsports, and it's the fact that we have a throwback scheme announcement with Chase Elliott throwing it back towards Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s National Guard scheme. And yes, I did make sure I had the image ready because look at this thing. This is a cool looking car, and it's an exact throwback towards the 2014 season when Junior won the Daytona 500 that year. That's 10 years ago when you think about it. Crazy.
Man, he had a dominant car that day too. And it did. When they showed that, the only thing that you even notice that's different is the number because he was running double digits, right? He was the 88. So
yep.
That's the only thing when you see them that just jumps out because, the numbers forward, that doesn't really catch you until you realize that, you see it's single digits. But bravo. I love it when they either find the right sponsor to do the color the same or the sponsor's willing to, do something unique or different. When they really get the cars to look like the old throwbacks, my hat's off to them. I really appreciate that. I think that's what makes them special. Sometimes I think they push the limit in what they consider a throwback. Bravo to Hendrick, Elliott, and Junior on this one. I think they hit this one out of the park.
Oh, for sure. And I especially love the extra touch that they put with the number 9 number to make it exactly slanted like Junior's old number there.
Yep.
And for reference, here's the old scheme. Very, very much a classic scheme out there.
It is. Well, and Junior's always liked that classic look. Like what he describes as cars and his favorite paint schemes and stuff like that, they tend to overlap a little bit. I mean, my favorite scheme of all time is the blue and yellow Wrangler 3. And it's the one with the pinstripes. So between where it goes from the blue, it has the pinstripes. I'm trying to remember which year that was. But very simple, right? You wouldn't see anything that kind of mundane these days, but that's always been kind of my jam. So I'm with you guys, man. And speaking of paint schemes,
and this is exactly why we're segueing into it. Paint scheme spotlight of the week time, because
that's right.
We still have plenty to talk about here too. So how about you cue us up there, Rich, and give us one of your choices for your favorite paint scheme this week.
Right. So I'm going with one of the road course ringers this weekend. That talk about me being old. This paint scheme looks as basic as you will probably ever see. I just like the black and gold look. It's very simple, but I think it's sharp. Give me Kobayashi, man. Who for the record, I think Kobayashi could be a decent top 15, top 20 kind of guy this weekend. Maybe better. I think, if he could inch his way into the top 10 would be interesting, but I like that number 50 black and gold Mobil 1 car.
Oh, yeah. This is a really good call there, Rich. This was actually going to be one of my choices, too, until I saw you took it up on the show sheet there. So this was a really good call. I love the fact that they actually changed the number around to match Mobil 1 for its 50th anniversary there, too, with the black and gold, the gold anniversary. It's a very sleek-looking car. It looks like it's got some speed behind it. And you know what? Considering that COTA takes place during the day, this car is really going to stand out on race day, and I like that there too.
It is, and it'll be fun to see if he can hang with any of those guys near the top 10, top 15. But 100% with you, man. I like it. And you know what? Why don't we go to one of yours here, Sean? Because his teammate, I almost changed because his teammate's car I thought looked awfully sharp. And I believe that was one
Yeah.
of your picks.
Yes, that is correct Rich. One of the paint schemes that I ended up choosing was this scheme right here. The Bubba Wallace Mobile One paint scheme, just because I also want an excuse to gush over the fact of how good looking that all of the Mobile One schemes have just
They
been
are.
so far this year. Tyler Reddick drove a really nice paint Mobile One scheme at Phoenix. Christopher Bell had one of the best looking paint schemes of the year back during the Clash. And you know what? We mentioned Kobayashi. We mentioned the Bubba Wallace here. Let's also give some love to the Xfinity and Truck Series here as well, because both of those are running Mobile One schemes with Chandler Smith and the number one Tricon Garage entry, both rerunning these schemes again too, which also look really sick.
Nice. I did not realize that. I hadn't paid that close attention. I do think that the cup ones though really catch my eye, man. The red horse or Pegasus with the red number. I think they all do look good, but I really like the 2 cup entries myself.
Oh, for sure. They looked amazing here. So let's get into your next paint scheme pick there, Rich.
I'm going back to Brad Keselowski again in the number 6. This Castrol scheme, I just think looks fire, man. It's
Oh,
not the
yeah.
way they do the number. I thought the number with the green and kind of the shading with it to kind of match the fading and the red and the green mix on the stripe. Like, I just thought this was a really, really well done paint scheme. Looks fast, as you like to say.
Oh, definitely for sure. And even though the hood has a lot of words on it
A
and
little busy.
it is a little busy. I absolutely love how the side of the car looks, especially, and it just looks really fast. I know this render in particular is not exactly how it'll look on the racetrack, but it is going to look very close to this. And the Castro colors, the green, the red, all very nice. And it kind of reminds me a little bit, and this is kind of taking it deep back in the day, but back when I used to play the Gran Turismo games on the original PlayStation, one of the more iconic looking cars was the Castrol car, the Castrol Toyota Supra. And the side of this car reminds me of that a little bit too. So it was also, I feel, a really cool nod, especially with Castrol being a company that's also been around a long, long time as well.
125 years, as it says right there.
Yep. All right. So on that note, let's get into my other paint scheme choice this week. And we're going to Stewart Haas Racing with this one. We're going with the brand new scheme, Josh Berry's Overstock scheme. Now, this scheme, new sponsor, new look. It's a very simple looking paint scheme with just the red and white, but I find it to be very, very effective, especially with how big the sponsor logo is, and it just fits very nicely. They have that little white base on the side there. The logo is nice and right in the middle. It's a very simple scheme, but it's very effective, and it also reminds me of one of the other classic Tony Stewart schemes, the Old Spice scheme. How about that, Rich?
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that for sure. That is sharp. That is sharp for sure. Well, enough about paint schemes. How about we get into talking about the Circuit of the Americas, or Circuit of the Americas, I should say. COTA, as affectionately referred to sometimes. It is a purposely built road course, more specifically for Formula One, and to draw a Formula One race to the United States. And NASCAR's only been running on it the last 3 years, although I believe the track's been around for 10, I want to say. I'm going off the top of my head, so don't quote me on that. But the track had been around for a couple of years before NASCAR even went there. And we are on race number 4, 4th time ever. And hey, turn 1 is notoriously crazy here, Sean.
Oh,
and
for sure.
I don't expect it to be any different. Look, they kind of designed it that way, but I just want to caution everybody. If we have a late caution, calamity will ensue. There is no getting around it. We will see cars all over the place, bumping, banging, spun around. Last time that happened, I believe we took 3 attempts to get to the finish, if memory serves correct. So that was 2 years ago, maybe. But yes, be advised.
Oh, but last year's race, if I remember correctly, still had quite a few cautions towards the late stages of the race, especially because I also remember when Tyler Reddick was talking about how nervous and how much he was sweating out the last part of the race because of how many times they had to keep restarting because they wouldn't even make it around to the white flag.
Nope, they don't even make it to turn 2 half the time. So just something to see. As far as the type of racing we're going to see, look, we're going right, we're going left. This is no shock. This is road racing. That's what we do. It is the short course package, short track package, road course package, however you want to call it. It is the same as what we will run at Martinsville, what we ran at Phoenix, not at Bristol, but at all the other short tracks and road courses. That means the changes we made for things like Martinsville that didn't work all that great at Phoenix will still be in play here, and we'll get to see kind of how that changes things. I'm not expecting it to change much. Look, these guys get super aggressive in the braking zones. We're going to see that. If you want to see beat and banging, it's probably the most likely place you'll see it is at a place like COTA. It should be fun and exciting. I'll be frank. I think the Xfinity race might end up being the best race of the weekend. It is absolutely loaded with talent, both cup drivers and road race ringers on some very good teams. So I'm very curious to see that. But Sean, the cup race should be quite good. I mean, we've had some great races here, and we've kind of buried the lead here, but Mr. SVG Shane Van Bergen. Man, why do I screw up his name? Would you correct me on that?
Shane Van Gisbergen.
Thank you. Shane Van Gisbergen. After winning his first NASCAR race ever at Chicago, comes home 10th in the Indianapolis Grand Prix a few weeks later, is back again in a cup car. Now, he's been in Xfinity, and he's running Xfinity again, but he's back in a cup car, Sean. Talk me off the ledge. Why shouldn't I be super excited like I am? Because I'm excited to see him. For some reason, I forget about the Indianapolis Grand Prix run.
Well, overall, when it comes to SVG, there is still some excitement to be had, especially if he ends up qualifying towards mid-pack or so around the field, because COTA is also a track where equipment, it does matter, but it isn't going to be as big of an impact as some other tracks like the mile and a halves, because it's a little bit more about driver ability in order to get through the course. And SVG is pretty good with that. And he is going to be running double duty with both the Xfinity and Cup races this weekend. So that's something to watch. The only thing that I will say, however, is that he's not with Trackhouse, but he's with Kaulig in the Cup car in particular too. So, and Kaulig, even though that they've had some good strong runs at the road courses before with AJ Allmendinger, who's also back this weekend doing double duty as well, that'll be exciting to watch. The Kaulig cars, they just also haven't been the fastest exactly always at times. So while I think SVG could get a good run, I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be in to win this race yet, just because of that.
I'll take a lot more faith or gamble with Kaulig and Xfinity than I will in Cup. I think we were so impressed with Trackhouse that first year that when we see investment like Spire's making, and we see investments like Kaulig has made, but I think maybe we're setting expectations too high. Rick Ware is probably what our expectations for Rick Ware is currently exceeding what we thought they should be. But where we have them for Rick Ware is maybe more appropriate for where we should have them for Kaulig and why did I just forget? Not Trackhouse, but Kaulig and Spire. Just not quite there yet. We'll see. If anything, we know this much. As long as the car sticks together, you don't have to necessarily have the best car to win on these road courses. Having drivers like SVG and Dinger, and I wish I could be. I'm excited because I feel like these two guys know so much about road racing and have both now got stock car experience that the team notes for the road races here and going forward could just be off the charts. Like I don't want to overstate the issue because it's a lot of unknowns. It's not real tangible, but I don't think we necessarily, or I think maybe we take for granted the lack of team notes or how good set of team notes, it's like Harv or Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski as teammates. That Penske made a leap with those two drivers, and Brad partially recruited Joey to come over there to Penske because of their friendship. And I think that helped booster the team overall. So I won't be shocked to see that we see an improved road course program from Colleague Racing at the Cup Series going forward.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They got SVG, they got Allmendinger, and then the third car, which is their full-time entry, has Daniel Hemrick in it, and he's had some respectable runs in the Xfinity Series before at this track as well, and that's something to keep in mind. He could be a potential, say, lower value driver that we could consider if the qualifying has him deep enough in the field and if his practice numbers look respectable enough. That's the thing, too. Practice numbers are everything, too, with this track as well.
We won't get a ton of laps, unfortunately. We won't get that consecutive lap average we always chase. It just, look, the whole race is the truck race is only 42 laps, for example. What are we, 67 for Cup or something like that? So there's not a lot of laps, but we'll get some times. We got to be careful with some of those times because, you could see someone like a Corey Heim who gets off track, doesn't look that great in practice, qualifies up front, or vice versa. I mean, to your point on Daniel Hemrick, if he would stop qualifying too well, I mean, let's be honest, he's been more of our plays, and he's been borderline a good play anyway, where he's qualified, but he just keeps qualifying in that like 23 range, and you're playing with fire around there. You know what I mean? So we'll see. The practice times we'll be noting. We'll have all that information in Discord. And hey, go to fantasyguru.com. There's all access to my articles, Sean's articles. If you sign up for the Game Time MVP plan, 12 months, $74 on all sports betting, all DFS on everything except for March Madness, football, and baseball. Trust me, we've already won that money back for you on NASCAR. If you were with us to start the NASCAR season, the guys over there in MMA, hockey, PGA, NBA, Finsty, Ray, they're getting it done with everybody. Jeff's been putting out NBA bets that are hit. Rob's got his March Madness stuff going out, so don't miss out on the $39.99 March Madness package. Rob also has got, man, have you seen some of Rob's bets for baseball too? The guy's been kind of fire on all these things. Like, I feel like people underappreciate him at times. I've been guilty of it, but sorry, that's a side tangent. Go to fantasyguru.com. You'll get it all. Honestly, I think the all-in MVP plays the way to go, but I'm biased.
Yeah, it is a good way.
Then you don't have to ask if you have access to something because you automatically have access for it. And honestly, the best thing to do, it's about once a year. Wait till they drop the promo code for the all-in MVP package. We've last year, I think it was like 50% off or something silly. Because I was telling everyone, I was like, look, the information you get is worth what you paid for the year. Plus, the access to everything with Discord and whatnot. But anyway, we can talk fantasyguru.com anytime. Let's talk more NASCAR. Let's get into some of the notable entries for this weekend, Sean. Because we are road racing, because we have some road race ringers. I can't say that word to space.
Road course ringers, you mean?
Good Lord. Thank you, Sean. Yes. Road course ringers. My Lord. It's not Boris said. I keep waiting for Boris said. We're not there yet. But we've got some notable entries really in all three series. In the truck series, we got Marco Andretti, Jack Hawksworth, and Ross Chastain. Not a road race ringer, but Cup guy doing some truck time. So it's worth noting. Hawksworth comes from an IMSA background, was last year's WeatherTech IMSA champion. That's the top level of IMSA. Look, there's a lot of overlap with these cars. He's a name to watch. Do I expect him to win? No, but he's in good equipment with Tricon. So and he's Mobile sponsored. Mobile would love to see a great run from him or Chandler Smith or both. So someone to watch. And Marco Andretti, hey, he carries the name. You know where he comes from. We haven't really seen much from him in the NASCAR level. Top 15, top 20 guy. Wouldn't get overly excited. You'll see some fast laps from him in practice. But Not a lot of faith in the team overall as far as top-notch equipment, but, I don't think we'll use him for DFS because he's probably going to qualify way better than I expect him to finish. But notable name all the same. We're going to have to split up the Xfinity one, Sean, because there's just too many. Seriously, the Xfinity, they're sending people home. The Xfinity field is so full this weekend.
Oh, for sure. The Xfinity, I think, is probably the most interesting when it comes towards the different open or part-time teams that have just been coming over here. Ty Dillon, Danil Kvyat, I may have mispronounced that. Sorry if I did. Kyle Larson, Ty Gibbs, John Hunter Nemechek, Ed Jones, Sage Karam, Kaz Gralla, Austin Green, Alex Labay, and Brad Perez. Yeah, this is a very, very big list of drivers that aren't exactly full-timers or someone you see every day in the Xfinity series. And for that, there's a lot of variables that are going to be at play, and we're going to have to really pay close attention to practice to see what happens and who gets a feel for their cars more than anything at that level.
Yeah, I mean, when you got Gibbs, Larson, and John Hunter, I mean, Gibbs and John Hunter, they're stepping down into JGR equipment. You have to like Ty Gibbs' chance right off the bat. He's been a previous road racer for Gibbs. Nemechek has not. He's had some decent runs. He's been up front at the end of races, like at Portland last year. He's also running JGR equipment where he's had a lot of success. So while he doesn't have a ton of road racing success, I think it's a name you need to watch. And Larson stepping down. Look, he hasn't had the best runs here at COTA. He's just getting more seat time. They do this with Larson from time to time, but whenever he does, you got to take note. I'm not overly excited for Ty Dillon. It is what it is. Some of these road racing guys like Kaz Gralla, I'm kind of interested to see how he runs. He's been running more stock car races. He gets some good wins, and his background has been road racing. I talk about Sage Karam a lot in the overview article. He and Sam Mayer gave us an epic battle at Road America last year. I mean, it was an absolute fantastic show the last 4 laps, and he's with the same team. Last year, Karam drove for numerous teams, only had one race with Sam Hunt, and that's the race at Road America that they ran well and almost won. So he's kind of on my list already. And Austin Green and Brad Perez, they have quite the road racing backgrounds too. So to your point, the equipment's a little different in Xfinity. So, I don't know if we're overly excited to see some winners coming from a lot of this group other than, the first few we named. But some solid finishes, I think it's worth noting for DFS purposes.
Oh, for sure. Really, I think it's like you said, Larson, Gibbs, and Nemechek. Those are the 3 to watch if you're looking for a winner out of this group. But for a lot of these other drivers, you want them to finish towards the middle of the pack, top 20, top 15. That would be a great day for some of these drivers. And that's just something that I think we should keep our expectations to. But I'll make sure everybody's covered for the Xfinity series this week with my article and my breakdown over at fantasyguru.com. So stay tuned, keep it locked and loaded. But I also got you for Cup here, and then we got some more Cup to talk about this week here.
Yes, and don't forget, you always have access to us in our Discord channel too. We have a NASCAR betting channel and the NASCAR DFS chatting channel, if you will. For Cup, we've already kind of talked about the notable entries that are a little different. We've got Dinger, we've got SVG, and we've got Kobayashi, right? Kobayashi's with 2311 should be good equipment. Colleague is, covering both SVG and Dinger's entries, so not as excited about their equipment. However, of all 3 drivers here, SVG is the one I'm most interested in or excited about overall. Kobayashi's just a fun guy, man. I don't know if we could expect more. Like I said, I think a top 10 for him would be massive, but good looking car too.
Oh, for sure.
Remember, you can find all this at fantasyguru.com. So let's get into some of our DFS thoughts here, Sean. Let's cover at least some of our notable drivers we want to watch. Friendly reminder, this is before practice and qualifying. Lines will change. Qualifying, where guys qualify will change. Who's chalky, who's not, what's contrarian, what's not, who we like, who we don't like, who all of a sudden becomes a value and who's not a value at all. These are guys and names we're watching for that we expect to quote unquote make some noise. We expect them to be kind of impactful this weekend. So we're more curious to see how they look in practice whatnot. We're going to look at everybody, but these are the names we're kind of expecting to, lead the charts, if you will, at least in their prospective groups. So lead us off, Sean. We got a lot of overlap, I think, here through quite a bit of this list here today.
So I'm going to be going through the top price picks here first, and these are drivers that you expect at the top of the ladder. Although one of these drivers I'm going to name is debatable when it comes to that. We'll get to that there. But for me, I have Tyler Reddick, William Byron, and Ross Chastain listed. All three of these drivers have had some great history at COTA before, especially Reddick being last year's winner at the track where he also led the most laps. Byron also was a contender in that very race as well. He led the second most laps there with 27 led. And then Ross Chastain, he got his first career Cup Series win at Circuit of the Americas before. He's been very consistent. He's got one of the best average finishes of all drivers when it comes to this track of 3.0. There's only one driver in the field that is better than that, and I did not name him, but for those curious, it is Chase Elliott. 3.0, though, he's finished in the top 5 in every single race at COTA. He's the only driver to do that, Ross Chastain. Yeah, you cannot ignore him this week.
And he's driving the truck race too. And while I do have a little bit of variance with Sean, I do talk up William Byron in my overview article. So like I always say, when Sean and I overlap, take note, wave the green flag, if you will. It's something worth, like I said, taking note of. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that because my group's a little bit different. That was more out of curiosity. Like I said, I wrote up William Byron in the article. So my group is Reddick. I'm with you on Reddick. Look, he's the only Cup driver to have multiple road course wins in this car. No one else has. He's got 3, and he's the only one. So Christopher Bell, I keep coming back to Bell. He's ran well. Was a little bit disappointing there at Bristol. Obviously was the man at Phoenix. He's run well on some road courses. He showed out well last couple of years at the Indianapolis Grand Prix. He's had decent runs here. It's a name I want to watch and note. Like I said, it was between him and Byron. And then the other name I'm going with is Kyle Busch. I don't think people realize how good Kyle Busch is on road courses. He's ran well here in particular. I'm going Kyle Busch, but he has one of the best top 5s, top 10s, average finish, the whole 9 yards of all the Cup drivers at road races throughout his whole career, actually. And over the last year, since he's been with RCR, it's been some of the best performances he's had for his season, if you will, for the team. So I'm on Kyle Busch. I want to see what he's got.
I agree with you on the Kyle Busch call. I like that one a lot. He was definitely in the conversation for me when I was thinking about some of these top price drivers as well, but especially when you consider the fact that he has 3 top 5 finishes at road courses last season, driving that same number 8 car, which, funny enough, that used to be the car that Tyler Reddick drove, and he got 2 of his road course wins in the next gen car with that team. So
right.
let's not forget about that there too.
I did forget about that. Shame on me. Good call. So really, that team has probably put out the best finishes of any of the teams in NASCAR, right? Because we have to take Tyler Reddick's record when he was there, plus Kyle Busch's. And yeah, Reddick's got the 2 wins, but no one else has multiple wins anyway. So the 2 wins for that team, plus Kyle's runs. Sold, Sean. Sold. Give me the 8 car this week.
I like the 8 car a lot. The only one of those 3 that I'm not exactly 100% on with you on is Christopher Bell, to be honest with you. And that's just because he in the 3 starts there, he's only had 1 good finish. It was a 3rd place finish in 2022. The other 2 years, he's been involved in accidents, and COTA is just not one of his best road course tracks. He's been good at other road courses. He's had some solid runs there, but when it comes to COTA, he's been a little bit more inconsistent, and I just cannot trust it as much unless the practice numbers really, really convince me.
Totally fair. Like I said, I was back and forth on Byron, and I had already written up Byron a whole ton, so I did a little pivot. Like I said, some of this is notes for me because I don't want to get blind spots because I get them sometimes. So, well, let's move on to the mid-tier options. We got a little bit overlap here too. Nothing major. I'll just go first, Sean, real quick. Ty Gibbs, Chris Buescher, and Michael McDowell. Chris Buescher has 8 top 10s and 9 top 10s in the last 10 road races. Only one's a top 5 though, but a top 10 for a mid-tier driver. Ty Gibbs, look, he's been good in the Xfinity series coming up in the road races. He's been good here. Ty Gibbs, you're going to hear a lot of his name this weekend, in my opinion, and he's been getting it done. He's been showing speed everywhere we've gone so far this year. And look, Michael McDowell's been a good road racer, Sean. That's kind of been his claim to fame. It's where he got one of his wins. I know it wasn't here, but and the equipment's been better, as you keep reminding me week after week. So I got a hard time. He might be high priced by his standards, but at $8,000 on DK, it's still not a bad price driver for someone who I think they'll be disappointed if they don't get a top 10 finish.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I actually really like all 3 of these calls, especially. One of them does overlap with mine, so there's a little bit of bias there. But so I'm going to talk about the 2 that I didn't have within my list, and that is Chris Buescher and Michael McDowell. Buescher, he is probably the most consistent driver when it comes to quality finishes at road courses. And since 2021, that's a span of 18 total races at road courses. How many times has he finished inside the top 20? 17 times. Only once has he finished outside of the top 20 within that entire span. Buescher, he may not be the driver exactly in order to get the wins or get towards like the podium that much within that whole span. I mean, after all, he does have about only 3 top 5 finishes. He's the driver that you can rely on in order to get a respectable finish, bar none, and I love that about Buescher. As for McDowell, we know about his road racing background, driving in sports cars. The next-gen car is kind of like a sports car in a way. And McDowell, he's been solid overall when it comes to COTA history as well, because in 3 starts, he has 3 top 15 finishes, including 1 top 10 finish. I love those 2 drivers right there. And the one that overlapped, well, Ty Gibbs, he's been hot to start the season. He's got all those top 10 finishes. He finished 9th in his only COTA start. A lot to like there with Ty Gibbs, especially with JGR equipment.
100% with you, man.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to get into the other 2 drivers that I mentioned within my trio for the mid-tier. And the other 2 drivers are Alex Bowman and Austin Cindric. So Bowman, he's quietly, I'd say, one of the most underrated drivers when it comes to road course racing. I go forth and talk about the drivers within that same span of races I mentioned with Chris Buescher. Since 2021, 18 races at road. No, well, Bowman's made 17 starts at road courses within the span, but he has an average finish of 13.3, which is 5th best in all the drivers within that span. The only drivers that were better were Reddick, Buescher, SVG, and Elliott. So that's some pretty good company right there in order to keep in mind. But as for Bowman, he's also been very, very good when it comes to COTA finishes, because he has 3 top 10 finishes in 3 starts. In the last 2 COTA races, he's finished inside the top 3 both times. So you have to keep that in mind. You have to watch Alex Bowman this week as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. He surprisingly just kind of came up as a solid finisher. Like, you wouldn't really expect it with his background and everything, but he just has and look, he was a test driver for him. So he tends to be clean, keep it on the track, not do anything foolish. And that's a lot what Chris Buescher does too. So I think that's a great call. I tell you what, your next pick here though, Sean, man, I was on the fence. I was leaning that way, but I looked at recent history and I got scared. So talk me off the ledge.
So when it comes to Austin Cindric, a lot of the whole reason why I also picked him is because Penske is one of the best Ford teams out there based on equipment, but COTA is one of Cindric's better tracks. We know since he's been coming up through the Truck and Xfinity series that road course racing is one of his top disciplines. He's been very good at the road courses within those lower levels. And at COTA, Cindric has 2 top 10 finishes. He has a 6th place finish from last year, 8th place from the year before. But here's the other statistic that also caught my eye when it came to Cindric as well. He's led multiple laps in every single race at COTA in the Cup Series so far. And also within 5 of the 6 possible stages, he scored stage points. So he usually runs very well at this track. And with Cindric, road course racing, like I said, that's where one of the things he's best at. You have to really watch for him this week, especially at the price points that he is on both sites.
Oh, he was cheap. And like I said, I had him and then I went back and was double checking. I just didn't care for the recent run here, the last probably 4 or 5 road races. COTA was good, but I just didn't like really Penske overall at the last couple. And so I kind of got cold feet, man. Not going to lie. The funny thing is this weekend, I think there's some great values at both the mid-tier and the sleeper level. Like, we need to make sure we get the top scores, and it's going to be kind of tougher picking from the top of the crew. But there's going to be some serious value from the mid-tier all the way down through the value sleeper picks. Why don't you lead us off with who you got this week, Sean?
So when it comes to potential sleepers and values, the 3 that I ended up choosing were Eric Jones, Todd Gilliland, and Justin Haley. Out of the 3 drivers, the one with the best average finish, believe it or not, is Todd Gilliland, 13.0. 2 starts. He has 2 top 20 finishes, including a top 10 finish in this exact race 1 year ago. So, and again, we mentioned it with McDowell. McDowell is his teammate. Front Row Motorsports, they got themselves a bump up in equipment just from their partnership with Team Penske and just more manufacturer support from Ford. So right there, especially as we've seen since Todd Gilliland's clearly made some gains this season, he's one of those drivers that we have to really put on our radar this week. And as for Eric Jones, his average finish was 16.0, which is pretty solid when it comes to the three races at COTA. With his best finish being a 9th place finish, he has 2 finishes with positive place differential overall when it comes to that track. And as for Justin Haley, he's a driver that's quietly performed pretty solidly for the price point when it comes to Circuit of the Americas, because he also has 2 top 20 finishes when he previously drove for Colleague Racing. But the interesting thing is he drives for Rick Ware Racing. We mentioned it now. RWR has been exceeding our expectations. They got that partnership with RFK Racing. Haley is one of those drivers that I think people will not expect in order to have a good performance, but he ends up qualifying deep enough in the field. You bet I'm going to actually end up liking him a lot for DFS.
Understandable. I did not realize that on Todd Gilliland. I had looked at him and said, why do I feel like he always does better than I think here? And I went looking elsewhere, and I'll explain why I went looking elsewhere in a minute, but I don't have an issue with any single one of those. My first one was more of a gut shot, though, Sean. Brad Keselowski has run well in road courses. We haven't seen it in this car, but he's been at RFK since in this car, and we've talked about the challenges of RFK and how they've been trending in the right direction and how Brad was focusing all the efforts on building around Chris Buescher first. It's more of a gut shot, but I don't think we should sleep on Brad Keselowski this week. And at $6,900, I think he is grossly undervalued on DraftKings, especially. So he was my first one. I'm going to Zane Smith at $5,400. He's so cheap. He has been borderline dominant here in the Truck Series the last 2 years. I get this isn't the Truck Series. I get that he's not driving for the same team he drove in the Truck Series. But at $5,400, I don't care where Zane Smith qualifies, to be honest with you, because we've seen it from the likes of McDowell and whatnot. I think Zane Smith is a great potential play this weekend. And then I'm curious about Kaz Gralla. Knowing what I missed on Todd Gilliland, I think I'd rather swap the 2 out. But Kaz Gralla, he has a road racing background. He's had some solid performances at these road courses. So I'm game to take a little stab at Kaz Gralla. But, this is all pre-practice.
Yeah, with Kaz Gralla in particular, I do want to see more out of his practice numbers before I fully jump in. But I will say this, though, compared to previous weeks, I am a little more willing in order to take that chance and consider it just based on the road course racing skill. You mentioned about Zane Smith. Zane Smith, he's had some horrible luck all year, too. So this is a good track for him to potentially turn it around, considering his past history. And then Brad Keselowski, I was a little shocked to see Brad was priced that low, especially considering when you look back towards the last 4 road course events, his finishes have all been inside the top 20. He ends up qualifying further back than that. I really am going to say I'll be in on BK there.
Yeah. I think he's undervalued no matter where he qualifies or finish. I just think DraftKings has him priced wrong, man. I really do. So is what it is, man. I disagree with them all the time. We know that. Well, I tell you what, let's talk about some bets coming up. I've got a couple of sneaky bets. I know this is a long shot, but in the truck series at 10,000 to 1, go put a buck on Sage Karam. I would love to find a top 10 for Sage Karam because it's probably plus money at, say, plus 500, plus 600. The best I could find, probably might be a little less. It's plus 1,200 for a top 5. I don't think I want to go that route, but I tell you what, at 10,000 to 1, I really don't mind putting a buck on him. Yeah, top 5 is plus 1,200. I'd rather find a top 10 at plus 300, something like that. Sammy Smith at plus 3,500. He is also priced oddly. I get he's with RCR, but RCR's had good road course win. I mean, Sheldon Creed about got one twice last year.
Sammy
he got
Smith
one stolen
is with
from
JRM, not RCR.
Why do I keep putting him? What? It's Jesse Love that's with RCR.
Yeah.
Well, Jesse Love should be on our list too, but it's not really his background, but I'm not going to be shocked to see Jesse Love do well. My apologies. He took over for Josh Berry. Josh Berry would have, whatever. It's still the teammate to Sam Mayer. I still think Sammy Smith is priced way out of whack. The equipment is there. He literally ran 100% of his laps last year in the top 15 at 35 to 1. Again, I'm all about like putting a buck on these guys and seeing if I could collect 35 to 100 bucks. Other than that, do you have any other kind of odd? I mean, we'll have a full coverage of it for this weekend in Discord, but those are just 2 that jumped out at me that I saw from the Xfinity race in particular that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think those are some pretty promising numbers. As I also look at the betting board there too for Xfinity, Cole Custer at plus 1,800, I find
That's another one.
Is a little bit odd too, just because
agree.
he's in probably the best Ford team in the Xfinity series, you could say right there. So that's something that has my eye, or you can even consider Parker Kligerman at plus 2,500 because Parker's another one of those drivers that keeps knocking on the door, especially at these road course events too. So that's another one right there that jumps out at me as well. But let's get right on into the core 4s though. Rich, tell me about your betting core 4 first and foremost.
So, and again, this is pre-practice. These are just some of the lines I like. Kind of some gut shots more than anything, to be honest with you. Tyler Reddick at plus 450. He's going to be everybody's favorite. If anything, we might, if you think you're going to be in on Reddick, because we don't really need to see his practice times for us to be in on Reddick with his history, bet it now, because if he qualifies well, practices well, that line's going to drop to plus 250, something like that, plus 300. SVG plus 900. That one's going to be tricky, because the betting action, people are probably going to want some of that action. It's going to drive the number down. We're going to need him to qualify poorly or run poorly in practice for that number to come down. That's probably not going to happen. If anything, he'll probably qualify better than where he would finish. So, again, if you went in on a guy at 9 to 1 SVG, I can't get Chicago out of my mind, bro. I just can't. Ty Gibbs at plus 1,100, 11 to 1. Excuse me. He's been showing speed. The young man's going to have a win here sooner than later. He's had good COTA history in the Xfinity series. He's had other road course racing performances that are worth raving about in his Xfinity history. He's been gradually showing and improving at the Cup level. We've seen it at basically every track so far this year. His number's probably going to come down post-qualifying. And I think Kyle Busch is a steal of a bet at plus 1,500, 15 to 1. Like I said, that's one of my favorite bets of the weekend, quite honestly. RCR is off a little bit. I get it. Just like Zane Smith, this would be a prime opportunity for a bounce back. He's capable of it. He runs well here. The driver history adds up. The team history adds up. I think a plus 1,500. He's a little underpriced. I'm willing to take a shot on Kyle Busch.
I like some of those picks. I mean, I overlap when it comes to my betting core four with Reddick, which I'll get into in a second. SPG at plus 900. I'm going to wait and see on that one to see if the odds move around after practice and qualifying, just because I want more of a baseline level of where the equipment is. But it's not a bad number overall, too, to consider. But I do like the numbers for Ty Gibbs and Kyle Busch, especially Kyle Busch there. I have to agree with you. That's a bet that I think would be worth taking a shot on for sure. And overall, especially we mentioned it, that 8 car has been good at road courses so far within the next gen era. So we have to keep that in mind. As for my betting core 4, like I said, I have Tyler Reddick at plus 450. Then I have William Byron at plus 1,000. He's been good at this track, as I've mentioned. Ross Chastain, this is one of his best tracks. He's at plus 1,200 there, 12 to 1 odds. Love to see that there with Chastain. And then Austin Cindric, he's a little bit more of my sensible long shot play there at plus 2,800. The Team Penske equipment, Cindric's been really good when it comes to road courses. I cannot ignore that, Rich. I just can't. And I'm just going to throw in an honorable mention for a super deep long shot. Todd Gilliland, I would put a buck on this at least. Plus 10,000 there. 100 to 1 odds.
I would say a buck wins you $100, man. That's why I said I don't mind doing that once in a while, because if it doesn't hit, you honestly aren't going to notice it among your losses for the most part. If it does hit, it's going to cover a few bets for you at the very least. So, and we're not going to get too many opportunities to bet things like that and still have it. Like I said, they're long shots, but as we've seen with Sage Karam, as we've seen with Todd Gilliland's history, they can be in the conversation. And there's being in third place with 3 laps to go. I get if you don't win, it sucks, but it's still fun being in that sweat. So I'm all for it.
And
well, let's
just
be quick
to also
here.
add quickly on to here too. Todd Gilliland for a top 10 finish. He did finish 10th last year. He's plus 350 with that.
I like that. Let's quickly go for our DFS because we said we were going to hit the time and we're a little over. So let's quickly do our DFS core for. There's a lot of overlap in mine, so I'll hit the drivers that overlap. Tyler Reddick, Zane Smith, Michael McDowell. Price-wise on all of them. Zane Smith is this stupid cheap option in both formats. And as I said, I know I'm kind of counting on his truck history, but look, he'll have confidence. I'm comfortable that the cars can handle the work that's going out there. So I think he's a solid play. The last pick for, each, Brad Keselowski on DraftKings for 6,900. Already talked about that. Stupid cheap. And Ross Chastain, I like him better on FanDuel because there's way more than enough money over on FanDuel, so I can kind of top load it a little bit more. And Ross is an actual value over there, so I think Ross is a great play. Back to you, Mr. Sean.
All righty. Now with my DFS core 4, I have 3 drivers that basically overlap between both sites, and that's Tyler Reddick. He's 10,500 on DraftKings, 14,000 on FanDuel. He's the most expensive driver on both sites, but it's for very good reason there. Just with the history, how good he's been at road courses. You cannot ignore him this week. Ross Chastain, I know you mentioned it for FanDuel at 9,000. I absolutely love the price there. And his price on DraftKings is still pretty good too. 9,000 there as well. So he's debatable between like a mid-tier and a top price driver. So like that value there. And then as for my third driver, that's between both sites, Todd Gilliland, 6,200 on DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel. He's a total value, total steal for your lineup to easily round things out. And as for my last driver, which is like the mid-tier just above Todd Gilliland, for DraftKings, I'm going with Austin Cindric at 7,200. But for FanDuel, I'm going for Alex Bowman at 7,000. Bowman is the cheaper driver on FanDuel. Cindric is the cheaper driver on DraftKings. Both I'm expecting some solid runs. Go ahead, mark it, and we're going to move on.
Excellent. Well, hey, don't forget, you can find all our content, including this podcast. You can find this podcast on YouTube as well, but you can find everything at fantasyguru.com, part of the Elite Plus network. We've got our Minder Marsal over there. One Man's Opinions over there. We've got live streams for everything else. For $74.99, you get our Game Time MVP package, which includes everything except for March Madness, football, and baseball. Well worth it, guys. You'll win your money back, whether it's DFS or sports betting. Remember, it's 12 months, so any sport that carries over into the 2025 year, you're covered there too. For Rich Maletto, I'm Rich Maletto. For Sean Engel, thank you for tuning in to Race Guru Thunder Hour. Sean, do you want to take us out here? You got anything for us?
Well, we're going to twist and turn. We're going to give it our best. Stay tuned and lock the note into Fantasy for all of our content. There, we win. That's right.